I'm joined on this Google Hangout by Representative Clem Smith of D-Velda Village Hills, one of the St. Louis County communities, and we're going to take a look back on the 2015 legislative session. Representative, thanks for your time today.
All right, thanks for the invite.
Number of things we want to get to, two that I know that were very important to you in the past session. One of those, of course, was the bill that was supposed to address the student transfer law, and that's been a couple of years now that an effort has gone to addressing that law. And I say supposed to, of course, the proponents of what came out of the legislative session say that they did just that. You and some other critics have said that the bill that came out did anything but. Tell me about how you assess that bill.
Oh well, it's a complex situation, the transfers, but there's a one simple issue that needs to be addressed that just has not been addressed year after year, and that is the question of tuition. It's hard for a school district that is involved in a transfer program to set forth any sort of budget without any set amount of tuition rate that they'll be paying. So, for example, you're the Normandy School District paying $20,000, $18,000 to districts that students transfer to, but they don't even spend that amount on the students that are there in the district. So when you have more money leave the system than you have there left in the system, the kids and the students that decided to stay and the families that decided to stay in that district are put at a disadvantage. And that shouldn't be so. But everything in 42 kind of danced around that issue, but never really went to the heart of it, which is putting a hard cap on the rate of tuition that a sending district would have under a transfer program.
What did you think about what 42 does with charter schools and virtual schools? Are those useful, helpful things in the bill?
Now, I'm not a too bad of a, I guess, critic against charter schools, as long as they provide and are have to set the same standards as the public institution. I have no problem with them. I think there's creative things that can happen that way, but unfortunately, in Missouri state law, there's an imbalance there where a charter school doesn't necessarily have to meet the requirements that a public school may have to meet, and they get public dollars. They almost get their check first, and then the district that the check is coming from has to figure out kind of what they're going to do with their budget. In this bill, the expansion of charter schools, I was trying to figure out why they needed them, because under, I believe it was Senate Bill 125, it may have given an unaccredited school district the authority to start up a charter school on their own. The issue is in St. Louis County, we have a lot of smaller school districts, so I don't think there was enough money there for someone to come in and to start a charter school. So that really didn't help the situation, unless there was something else going on where there was a district who wanted to receive Normandy kids and they wanted to start a charter school just for the Normandy school transfers. Now that right there could have been an issue right there, but that'd be a problem, because you're then cherry picking kids, taking the money, and kind of segregating them in the charter school. The component about the virtual schools, I didn't get that one at all. So you've got the Normandy School District, for example. The administration has said it, the superintendent in the past has said it, that there was an issue with reading at the school. I see virtual education as a good supplement to in-seat, in-class curriculum, but all by itself, it doesn't help. So I don't understand how that would help alleviate the transfer issue at all.
So, and now you've called on Governor Nixon to veto that bill. Let me ask you, what do you see then as the path forward? Let's start with, if it's vetoed, what do you see as the path forward? And then if it's not vetoed, if this bill is allowed to stand, either way, what needs to happen next year?
All right, so this is a crisis that's going to impact the whole state either today or in time. If Normandy goes down and other districts that are in a like situation go down, then those students just go over to the next district. So you're just transferring whatever the problem is, and it's not being fixed. I honestly think that we need to come back in a special session and address this issue dealing with the transfer alone. Everything else can be put in another bill or the legislation, but we have to get a cap on the amount of money that a sending district is spending. There's no way to move forward from that point. What 42 did, in my opinion, and I've said this before, is it keeps the Normandy School District kind of just with a faint pulse, but then it allows other districts to then get those students and get their maximum rate. So as long as the district's alive, they can then take the the tax dollars out of the Normandy Schools Collaborative and then distribute them amongst other districts. They were actually seeing an economic, how can I put this? I don't want to say the windfall, but they were making profit off these students. There weren't any additional resources being brought into these school districts, but you get one or two Normandy students in your classroom, and that's an additional $20,000, $30,000 that you're getting, and you don't have to hire another teacher. You just got to order a few more lunches. So we have to have a fix, and I think in a special session, or definitely the first thing come next year, that addresses just the financial component of transfers. Then we can work on curriculum and everything else. But when you put everybody's pet project in it, we're going to end up where we're at right now.
And I want to ask you, and you already said this at the beginning of your last answer, that this is an issue that will affect the whole state, but I want to expand on that thought a little bit, because I think that folks certainly in rural parts of the state, in outstate Missouri, probably don't see that this is an issue that they'll ever have to deal with. How real is the possibility that this, so far it's been talked about, certainly in St. Louis area schools, Kansas City area schools, how real is the possibility that some of these issues are going to start to affect other schools?
I think it's very real. I've never claimed to be an education expert, but I know with these new standards that districts must meet, you've got a lot of rural districts that are in trouble, that are right there. They could go to provisionally accredited or unaccredited at any time once the new testing comes out or the new standards are laid forth. They're going to have to deal with that issue. The students in rural Missouri, of course, they may have different challenges, but we have to look at public education and what needs to happen in order for that to fix. So to just look at Normandy and think, hey, that's just those kids over there in St. Louis County, I think would be a big misstep for the legislature to do.
I want to talk to you too about the municipal courts legislation and how that came out. And I know that one of your objections to that was the split, the difference between the percentage that municipalities in St. Louis County would be allowed to make from traffic tickets and fines being, and actually at the moment the percentages escape me, but it was a lower percentage for St. Louis County than the rest of the state, set at 20% under this bill. Again, assuming that it becomes law, that was sent to Governor Nixon. I know that you had a problem with that. What else about that bill were you not satisfied with?
Yeah. So with the percentage part, currently it's at 30. It then reduced the amount of traffic revenue to 20% for everywhere else in the state except St. Louis County, which I believe now gets 12.5%. If traffic's an issue, it's an issue everywhere. It's just not solely St. Louis County. So it's the application of or different treatment that St. Louis County was getting than the rest of the state. The other components of the bill, I actually like some of them. Some that talked about municipal court reform, some that talked about standards that a city or political subdivision must have in order to exist. If that's so good, and I believe it's a good portion, that portion of course should apply to the whole state, because it's just not a St. Louis County issue. I don't understand why St. Louis County has the most horrible cities in the world or something like that. No, they should apply to everything. Everybody kept bringing up, hey, Max Creek law, this is what the bill, we're going to change the Max Creek law. Max Creek was not in St. Louis County. It was in a rural area. So the standards, the municipal standards as far as the courts, and the standards as far as the percentage should have been the same statewide. I feel no need that there should have been a difference in St. Louis County. It's a statewide issue if it's an issue.
On either one of these issues, and I know this is the classic question that we hear asked of many in the legislature, but on either one of these issues, have you heard anything from Governor Nixon's office about what he might do?
I have not. I know that the governor currently, and this is through talking to some of his staff members, I've went up to him and said, hey, 42 is bad. and it needs to be vetoed, and we need to come in on a special session to fix the issue. It was communicated to me that the governor's kind of weighing all options here, so no firm answer either way on either bill. So I'm waiting, as the rest of the state is waiting, to see what's going to happen.
And you had complaints throughout the course of the session on those two issues, but also on others about getting to speak on the floor about those, about being able to offer amendments on those issues and other things through the course of the session. And of course, the Republican leadership says that they gave everyone time to speak, that they gave opportunities to do those things in committee and on the floor, etc. But what I want to ask you too is, as we go forward, we now have a new speaker in the House, as you and I both know, with the events that played out in the last little more than a week at this point. What are your anticipations of working with Todd Richardson?
Well, I remain optimistic with that. With him coming in, we were elected around at matter of fact, at the same time, came in, served on, I believe, a couple committees together. Always had a good, friendly relationship. We're just kind of hoping that happens to the whole General Assembly. Democratic, Republicans, it makes no difference. We're all sent up here by our residents, our constituents, to represent them. And what we saw under the last administration, and what I felt personally under the last administration, was the biggest limitation in speech I've ever heard. Sometimes you hear, the Republican Party say, hey, we're about freedom, equality, people being able to represent their constituency, and that wasn't the case. When you look at Senate Bill 42, I stood there from beginning to end. I'm the only tax-paying member of the General Assembly in the Normandy School District. This bill was supposed to be about the Normandy School District. However, I was not allowed to speak. The same thing happened with Senate Bill 5. There was some tricky maneuvering to limit the speech. The speaker then said what he had to say, and then speech was cut off. I represent all or part of 25 different municipalities. Once again, another situation in where, hey, here's legislation that's impacting the district I represent, but I cannot speak for my residents, and they sent me up here to do the job. So believe me, when I go to town hall meetings now and I try to explain to them what's going on, they're looking at me like, what's wrong with you? And then I have to go to them and explain them the system and the procedural moves that can happen that limit speech. And they can't believe it. They're flabbergasted, to say the least.
And the other thing I want to ask you about, especially how those two bills played out, and now I'm going off memory here, so it escapes me exactly whether or not some members of the Black Caucus voted for the Municipal Courts bill. I want to say that they did, but I can't speak confidently about that. I know that there were a couple that voted for 42 when it came out. I remember Representative Pearson making the comment that to vote against this bill would be worse than doing nothing. I guess the question I want to ask is, what is the atmosphere in the Black Caucus? Just because from the outside looking in, some of us have seen that there are votes that members obviously take differently, and that happens within a caucus all the time. But because these are very passionate issues, I guess what I'm asking is the caucus still cohesive? Is there any kind of split there?
Well, with those two issues, with 42 and with Senate Bill 5, we had members in the Black Caucus that were kind of all across the board with them. And we didn't take any stance as a caucus saying, hey, we're for or against this bill, for or against the other bill. So, members are free to do what they do and represent their constituency. So on Senate Bill 5, you had a few members that voted for that. And I expressed my displeasure with that, not just them, with the entire General Assembly, those individuals that actually supported both of the bills. So internally, no, there's no split, but on there was no position kind of taken on, hey, we're going to stand this way with this bill or that way with the other one.
All right. Want to talk a little bit about economic development. That is an issue that you and some other Democrats raised, that you wanted to see more effort in that area in the past session. Felt like that didn't happen as we head into 2016. Are there certain, shall we say, specific areas that you feel like could be addressed to improve economic development in Missouri?
I think with economic development, I think worker training is one of the the biggest things, or retraining folks through the community college, through whatever method to get people's skills back in line with these so-called jobs of the future. We did not have that. We keep having cuts to unemployment insurance, saying that somehow that'll incent somebody to get a job, but it doesn't work that way. Education and economic development, I think, were two key things that we've missed, and directly related to some of the outcry that happened in Ferguson. As we both know, the former speaker said that there was no Ferguson agenda, and we saw this year nothing passed to address any of those issues. But we have to do that. We've got major corporations that are in the St. Louis area that I think some of their hiring practices actually need to be reviewed. They're hiring on one end, but there's certain populations, I know in my community, that are not being hired for these jobs. We've got training programs that are administered by the state at some of the community colleges, and there's issues with people in my community actually getting in the door to become members of these training programs. So I think there's some stuff that is on the table now that can be fine-tuned and get some people back working. And then I think we can do a better job of incentivizing or doing whatever we have to do to get companies to expand their operations here in Missouri. We saw that happen with Boeing not too long ago. I'm not saying I'm the biggest fan of tax credits, but hey, if there's clawbacks in them and there's guaranteed jobs that are coming, hey, I think we need to look at that. And I think maybe there's more of that we can do to grow Missouri, especially the St. Louis region. Here in Missouri, we manufacture things very well. I worked in the automotive industry for 13 years. I've been in the aircraft industry for 6 years. We build things very well here in Missouri, and I think we need to promote that to the rest of the country.
How do you plan to spend your interim?
Well, I got a trip coming up next week, actually. I'm going over to Israel, and I'll be there for about a week, I think 7 to 10 days, looking at some economic development things and human service things over there. Then I'll be going back to my real job. So I work as an assembly mechanic for a aircraft maker here in St. Louis. So looking to make some money, because the legislature, you won't get rich up there.
You get back to and I'll use your term, your real job. I know some of your coworkers are going to be asking about what happened with right to work this past session and what kind of future that issue has. What are your anticipations? Can supporters find the votes to overturn the veto that evidently is coming on that bill?
I don't think so. Matter of fact, I went back to work Monday, and as soon as I clocked in, it was like a crowd around me asking me what was going on with right to work. And these are individuals that are all across the political spectrum. Some of them are diehard Republicans, but they have benefited from organized labor, and they see the benefit for it, in society. So I don't think that the majority party has the votes to push it through this year, but we've got to look at it in the future. I think maybe 5 years down the line, if the legislature keeps trending the way it is, and I call it people not waking up and looking at their pocketbook, we might find ourselves in a bad situation. So we've just got to do more member education, more constituent education on this issue.
All right. Clem Smith has been our guest, looking back on the 2015 session. Appreciate the time today, and may do this again a couple more times as we edge closer to the veto session into 2016. Thanks for your time today.
All right. Thank you, sir.
And this is Mike Lear on this Google Hangout from Missourinet.